We have a screenshot here with some lines on it to help illustrate here. All right, so what's being looked for is a long signal when the RSI, we can see that the RSI makes a trough and then moves back up and then moves back down again, and makes another trough, right? So when we get this higher low than a low that was made literally just another bar ago, right? Basically it's like a mini, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it could be like a mini divergence, an oversimplified kind of divergence there. This would be an example of generating a long signal here. So the lows of the RSI, a higher low would generate a long signal there, right? So we're looking for an RSI inflection, upward, right? So we're looking for a higher swing point than the immediately preceding RSI. So these low points need to be moving higher. All right, so what I have done, obviously I have the RSI on my chart now, but more importantly, I've put the swing highs and lows on the RSI indicator, right? So with the swing highs and lows, right, the input series was changed to the RSI, and then I had to go through and kind of figure out, what settings to use here. So, I was adjusting the number of swings and adjusting the swing strength so that I would see that right on the high points of the RSI, I would get, the swing highs and lows, identifying the high points and identifying the low points there. So what we can do is we can compare, so using the swing highs and lows, right? So in order to check if a pivot point or a swing point of an indicator is lower than a prior one, right? You need an indicator to track those swing point prices, right, for BloodHound. So remember, guys, BloodHound does not track indicator prices. That's the job of code, of indicators, and code to track, variables or indicator prices, specific points, such as a swing point, something like that. But we can use the swing highs and lows to track those high and low points for us. It's just a matter of getting, the settings set correctly, such as your swing strength and number of swings there. So now we can see when we get a high point on the next bar, we get the swing high equals that high point of the indicator until we get to the next high point. And then the swing high will drop down to the high point, to the next high point that was generated. And we're using the widest tops and the widest bottom plots, right? So those are going to be the highs and lows. And the two tightest plots here is set to invisible or transparent. Okay, and of course, obviously, remember to adjust your panel there so that the swing highs and lows is on the RSI. So all we simply need to do is, so when we get an inflection down, we can then check the price of the RSI one bar back, right? So you only get a high point the bar after. So the next bar after, we check one bar back. And let's see, let me do this in terms of a long signal here. And actually, hold on, let me get rid of these signals from the previous question here. So let's just start a new logic template. There we go. Okay, now we don't have those racing stripes kind of interfering with us. Yeah, so here we go. So here's a setup right here, right? So when this inflection point, so let's see, right? So we get the RSI moving down, and we go another bar forward, then the RSI swings up. So there we go. So we had a low point form. And so then we could check, well, was there a low point, 2 bars back? No, there wasn't. Okay, so that doesn't qualify. Okay, So we might have another low point. Next bar. There we go. So we have an inflection upward of the RSI. And then we can say, okay, 2 bars back, was there another inflection point? Yes, there was. Okay, then now let's do the comparison. So let's compare, or let's check, so we have, so we can actually check whether the swing highs and lows stepped higher, right? That this widest bottoms plot, right? Did the red plot step higher, right? So is the current bar higher than the previous bar's red line, right? So we're checking that plot. Is the current bar's plot higher than 1 bar back? And if it is, then we know that these pivot points or swing points stepped higher because the swing highs and low, right, this low plot stepped higher. So that's what we're going to check. All right. So we're going to need a couple of inflection solvers. Let's connect that in. All right, so I'll just call this like inflection 0, I guess. So let's plug in the RSI. All right, we're just using the standard settings here. So we're interested in the RSI, not the average, but the RSI. So we're good there. And right, there we go. There's all of our inflection points, up and down, up and down. All right. And the next thing is, the RSI needs to be below 50 for a long signal, and it needs to be above 50 for a short signal. Right, so to do that, we can grab a threshold solver and check if the RSI is above or below 50. So we're going to put 50 in all of the thresholds, right? And so, So we're interested in a long signal if it's below 50, so less than, right? So for a long output, the RSI needs to be less than 50. So we'll set that. And so for a short signal, the RSI needs to be above or greater than 50. So we'll set that. And then we need to set in the RSI. All right, there's the RSI, standard settings, RSI plot, all good to go. Right, so there we go. So if the RSI is below 50, right, then we have a long output, and if it's above 50, you have a short output. So great. All right, so now we can start combining these together with an AND node. All right, so there we go. When the RSI, right, is below 50, and whenever it inflects up and generates a low point, we're getting a long output there. Right, let's go back here. If you notice, right, how come there's no long signal? Well, look back here, right? The long output, right, is on the bar after the inflection point. And right here, the RSI is still below 50 on the bar after. But look over here, right? When the RSI reverses upward, right, the RSI is actually above 50. Same thing here, right here, the RSI is above 50. So what we need to do is, with our threshold solver, is we can use the displacement to look back 1 bar, right? And so there we go. So yeah, we can actually see here that Yeah, who knows? Maybe, maybe we might want to say that the RSI still needs to be, below 50 after it inflects up. So maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe if the RSI is straddling 50, we should just kind of clear that out, and not use it for signals, or not include it. So let's see, let me go back here. All right, here we go. So here's a bunch of inflection points where the RSI is below 50. So yeah, that looks good. And let me make a quick adjustment here. There. All right, there we go. Make that 50 line a little muted, a little more subtle. All right, so we're looking for, two of these low points in a row. So when we get an inflection, we need to look back 2 bars and see, well, was there another inflection just literally 2 bars ago? Right, so let's see here. We could make a new solver, or we could just use this existing solver that we already have and use a look back node. And if we set the displacement to 2, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I think that'll work. Let's connect that in. Yeah, there we go. All right, so if we look at this, there's a low point right there. And hold on. Right, we had a low point there. And we had a low point there. Right, and so now we have an output on the second low point. So let's see here. So going back here, this long output, there's our low point, and then so it'd be 2 bars back from the low point, there was another low point. Low point, go 2 bars back, another low point. And so there we go. So right now we're just identifying when there's 2 low points right next to each other, right? So we had an inflection up, then another inflection down, another inflection back up. So, and let's see if we have anything like that on the short side. Yeah, there we go. So, there's a high point, immediate low point, and immediate high point, and another low point. So there we go. Okay, so now we need to make sure that these swing lows, are stepping higher. So now this is where we now compare the swing highs and lows output here, So we're going to compare the current bar to 1 bar back. Let's see. Let's look at this. Yeah, there we go. So once we have identified that we have 2 low points in a row, now we can compare the swing highs and lows, low point of the current bar to the low point 1 bar back. And if it's higher, then we know our low points stepped higher. So we now need a comparison solver. There's our comparison solver. Plug that in there. Let's see. So we are looking for a higher low and a lower high. So let's see. All right, so input A, that's going to be the swing highs and lows of the current bar. So we're going to select our swing highs and lows. And we are, let's see, so for a long, we're going to use the bottoms, right? The widest bottoms, that's the red plot. And the widest tops is going to generate short signals, right? So those are the highs. The swing highs are the widest tops, the green lines. And we need to remember to adjust our indicator settings, right? So we had number swings 2, swing strength set to 1. So, okay. So there's that, and we need to do the same thing again for input B. So once again, load in the swing highs and lows, adjust our number of swings to 2, swing strength to 1, and we're using the widest bottoms, the swing lows for long signals, and the swing highs, the widest tops for short signals. But this time, input B, that is going to be 1 bar back. So we're going to use a displacement of 1. And let's see here. Oh, yeah. So things almost look like they match up, weirdly enough, right in here. But over here, we can see things are messed up. So I forgot one critical thing. So if you remember, on the chart, what did we do on the chart with the swing highs and lows? We fed the RSI into the swing highs and lows. Right? So in our comparison solver, we also need to do the same thing. So we have the swing highs and lows, but we need to feed the RSI into it, or nest the RSI into it. So we're going to do a single click on the RSI and then hit the nest input button, like so. Yeah, and there we go. Again, we're just using the standard settings for the RSI. We want to feed the RSI plot into the swing highs and lows. So there we go. So we didn't. That's all we had to do was just grab the RSI and use the nest input button, and that'll feed the RSI into the swing highs and lows. Okay, so that's input A, and we need to do the same thing for input B. All right, swing highs and lows. Go find the RSI. I remember a single click and then nest input button. There we go. And let's see here. Oh, no, it is all correct. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, it gets a little confusing with all these extra long and short signals in here. So, so here we can see the swing low stepped higher, and we got a long output. And look here. So this swing low stepped higher, and we got a long output right there. This swing low stepped higher, and we get a long output right there. And then the swing highs step lower, and we get a short. Swing high, steps lower, we get a short. Swing high, steps lower, we get a short. Right, so there we go. So this is just identifying whenever the lows step higher or the highs step lower. So now, let's go back here. Here we go. Okay, so this signal should go away, right? Because the lows actually went lower. There we go. So that signal should go away. These two are okay. the low point stepped higher. So once we connect, right, this swing highs and lows comparison in there, then that will do the filtering for the low point stepping higher. There we go. So this went away. All right, so let's kind of scroll through here and see what we get. Yep, there we go. And yep, those highs stepped higher. Here we go. These lows stepped lower. Right? Let's see. Okay, yeah, so we didn't get a signal here because this actually took 2 bars. Yeah, so from the low to the high, it took 2 bars. So these high points are actually separated by 3 bars, not instead of 2 bars apart. They're 3 bars apart. Yeah. So we can go back to this and make an adjustment for that, in case there's an extra bar in there. Well, let's just kind of continue to scan through here. Yep, there we go. 2 highs in a row. Short. All right, these highs are stepping higher. Yep, those lows, too many bars in between. There we go. So we already know these are correct. All right, here's another one, right? Low point, high point, low point signal. There's another one. And oh yeah. So we can see the RSI is kind of straddling the 50 there. So just to kind of give a kind of further explanation here. So when the RSI is kind of straddling the 50 line here, right? These low points are underneath it, but the high points or the next bar after can sometimes be above it. So just to recap here, this threshold solver, which actually I should put the RSI name in there, right? So, so if you want, so remember the signal always happens afterwards, right? Because price has to move up to make a low point. All right. So if you're only concerned or care about the low point being under 50 and the high point doesn't matter if that's on the wrong side of 50, right? Then when you get the signal, then you need the threshold solver to look back 1 bar, right? Look back 1 bar where the low point's at. And so that would mean just adjusting the displacement there to 1. And so now this threshold solver is looking back 1 bar. And look, yeah, so actually right there, look. So we have a high point above 50, right? Then we get a low point, and then another high point above 50, and then we get a short signal. Right, so this high point was above 50, and this short signal showed up because the threshold solver is now looking back 1 bar at the value of the RSI at the high point, which is back 1 bar. So if we set this back to 0, then the threshold solver is looking at the, it's looking at this bar right here. And the RSI is now below 50, right, after the high point was above 50. So, and we just happened to get a signal here because the RSI, right, the RSI has been jumping above the 50 line, but just so happens that on this particular low point, it didn't cross the 50 line that time. So that's why this signal here managed to show up. right? So you can add, different requirements, slightly different filtering, by adjusting exactly which bars need to be above the 50 line or below the 50 line. All right, there we go. There's a couple more there. Okay. All right, so let's revisit adding an exception for an extra bar in between. So yeah, let's look at this right here. Right. So there's actually 3 bars between these high points, right? There's 2 bars here in the middle instead of just 1 bar. So what if you wanted to allow for an exception like this? All right, so I'll just call this one like high, low, high. And then the next and node here, we'll call it high, low, low, high. All right, there we go. So we can have an extra kind of low. It's not a low point, but a lower bar in between there. Okay, let's see. All right, just gonna move things around a little bit. There we go. All right. So take note, this solver and this solver, even though we see 2 of them on the board, they are the exact same solver. So if we look on the solvers list, it's this one solver, right? There's only one of them, only one solver, but we're seeing 2 nodes on the board, 2 nodes of the same solver. So if you change one, you change the other because they are the same single solver, right? So let's see here. Okay, so for this one, right, we have a high, low, high, and that has a look back of 2. So we now need to have a look back. We now need to have a look back of 3 if we want to allow this extra bar in between these high points. Right? So I'm going to grab a look back. And sorry, let me rename this here first. Okay. So this is doing a displacement of 2. There we go. So now down here, connect that in, connect that in. So now this look back is going to have a displacement of 3. So it'll allow for that extra bar in between. Like so. And let me I'm going to grab another swing point comparison solver on there. So I'll drop that one down here. All right, so again, this solver and this solver are the same swing higher low and lower high solver. Right, so they're the same solver. If you change one, you change the other one. Right, so again, back on the solvers list, they're both this same solver here. So, yeah, you know what? I could just connect that in like that. There we go. Make it less confusing. Yeah, and there we go. So here's our short signal, and we had 2 extra bars in between these high points. There we go. Just make these leaders look nice there. All right, so there we go. So now we have, the difference of, that's how we can add or allow for a few extra bars in between there. So because this is, very simple, we could just modify the look back node and allow an extra bar there in the displacement. So, and the system still works. So, once you try and build in a lot of variability in there, then you might, get into some weird things where maybe the swing highs and lows isn't tracking the high points, as you want the high points to be tracked, or the low points and things like that. So, yeah, the wider these 2 peaks, these 2 high points get, or the wider the 2 low points get, then you might start dealing with issues from the swing highs and lows indicator not tracking the highs and lows as you want them to be tracked and things like that. So let's keep that in mind, right? The wider these get apart, you might start introducing, issues, that come about from the indicator that's tracking the high points. So, but that does it. So yeah, there you go. There's John's little higher low and lower high on the RSI. Cool. All right, let me see if there's any, I guess one last thing. If you want to see both of these combined, then we need an OR node. So an OR node is how you can combine multiple signals together like that, if that's what you want. So, but we'll just leave it like this as the question was written. So this one is how the question was originally written there.